What's going on, everyone? In today's episode, we're staking up some tomatoes. I had to get out here and do this because they're getting nice and tall. They're looking beautiful, they're starting to flower. So I thought I'd bring you guys along for a couple things that we're doing while staking up our tomatoes that I think you guys might enjoy. Let's go. So the first thing we're doing this year, which is actually brand new for us, we've never tried this before, and I'm really excited to see how it turns out, is we have two Kellogg's breakfast tomatoes here. Now last year, they got about 8 feet in height. We had our 6-foot tall trellises, our T-posts, and they went about 2 feet past that. So 8 feet in height. And I thought, how cool would it be to actually use our cattle panel trellises, which are about 7 feet tall, and get them to climb the entire trellis and make the arch over. So we have tomatoes hanging down basically at eye level. I thought it'd be so cool. A unique use for our cattle panel trellises, which are usually used for things like pole beans or melons and stuff like that, cucumbers. So it'd be kind of fun. So what we're doing is we are just single stemming this plant, letting it get nice and lanky and tall. And then when it gets to the point where we can tie it up to the trellis, that's when we're gonna start to train it up the trellis. So right now, all we're doing is we're taking off the suckers, taking off the lower leaves, so it promotes that growth upward. And it's going to continue to reach for the sun, reach for the sky. Because it's an indeterminate, it's going to grow all season, which is awesome. And we're almost to the point where we can get it onto the trellis. So it's going to be there really soon. I don't know, I think it'd just be really cool to basically have tomatoes hanging down right here. Typically they're on a trellis and it's kind of far away from you, so you're reaching in to kind of take care of your plants. I think it'd just be fascinating to have a tomato hanging right here. And I've never done it before, so I kind of love to try it. Gardening is a lot about just trial and error and discovering things and having fun in the garden. And if you're not doing new things every year, what are you really doing in your garden? So I'm excited to see how it turns out. And then here we're actually just doing our normal tomato staking. This is single stemming, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. This one's already done, so there's not really anything to do, but we're just tying these up to the T-posts. And a lot of you have asked me over the years what I prefer when it comes to staking up my tomatoes. Now you guys know that I, for a long time, have advocated single stemming because you get the most amount of plants in the smallest space, allows for other plants to grow underneath. We're gonna probably do some beans and some beets under here. So it makes a great understory that allows us to intercrop other plants, but it also allows for more airflow and really helps to promote fruit development, which is awesome. So I love single stemming, it's great, but when it comes to single stemming, there's so many different things out there to single stem your tomatoes. I used to use furring strips for a long time, and I switched to T-posts. And so a lot of you, I read the comments, I read every single comment. A lot of you have asked me how I've liked using T-posts versus furring strips, because T-posts are not quite as tall as furring strips are, so you don't get quite as much height. These cap out once they're in the ground at about 6 feet tall. So they don't have nearly the height, but do they have any other benefits? And so I thought I'd kind of talk about the T-posts for a second, because I do in fact like them a lot more than furring strips. So before we talk about T-posts and what I like about them, I'm gonna show you a real time of just how I clean up this tomato plant, get it staked up to the trellis. Now, obviously I've been doing this for a long time, but it shouldn't take you a long time. I hear so many people say that it takes them way too long to maintain their tomatoes, so they rather just put them in a cage. And I'm not saying that's incorrect, but I'm taking this tomato plant from what was a totally unmanaged tomato plant. We threw it in the ground about 2 weeks ago and it's been just growing and getting established, to a clean, tidy, single stem tomato plant. And it's gonna be growing up this T-post here, and I'm gonna do it in less than a minute. So there we go, there's that, all cleaned up, and it's ready to tie up to the post. And so I frankly just think it's a little bit of an excuse. You know, it's not that it takes too much time. It's that, let's be real, I think just some people don't want to take the time, which is fine. If you're really busy, you know, you can take the lazy gardening approach, nothing wrong with that whatsoever, but there's so many benefits. Like I said, increased airflow, increased fruit production, cleaner plant, more plants that you can grow in a smaller space. There's a lot of benefits, tons of benefits. So if you want to throw them in a cage, you're going to sacrifice convenience for space that it's taking up. Absolutely. So, you know, just some pros and cons. And your plants might get things like blight a whole lot sooner because there's a lot less airflow. So, you know, it definitely has its pros and cons. But like I said, less than a minute to take that plant from bushy and really just kind of mangy to nice, clean, and tidy, going up a T-post. So now let's talk about what I like about T-posts. So I do like T-posts, spoiler, over furring strips. Now, I obviously really enjoy them for a lot of reasons, but there's a couple things that make them great. Yes, I do wish they were a little bit taller. I don't like that they cap out at only about 6 feet, because when my tomato plants, because they're indeterminate, when they get 8 feet tall, it ends up growing up and snapping. Luckily, that's near the end of the season, but it would be really nice to have a tomato trellis that allowed me to grow it 8-10 feet up. But the benefits of going with T-posts far outweigh the benefits of furring strips. Furring strips are cheaper, absolutely, but furring strips I find end up breaking a lot because when they make the piece of wood, oftentimes there's knots in the wood, and knots in wood that's only about 1 inch thick ends up being a fulcrum point, a really weak spot. And under high wind or heavy fruit yields, I've found that that weak spot where the knot goes through the wood ends up snapping and breaking. And I've lost a lot of tomato plants that way. So many so that I said, you know what? I think it's time that we invest in some T-posts. So that's the first thing. It's just, they're a lot stronger, a lot sturdier. Though they're shorter and a little more expensive, again, benefits far outweigh the costs. Another thing that I love about these T-posts that I think is often a very overlooked feature, but for someone who's been growing tomatoes since about 9 years old and is passionate about growing tomatoes, it is a very important feature at that. And that's these little notches on the T-post. These little notches actually are very important for holding the plant up when it's heavy. Because as the plant grows, and naturally it's gonna get heavier, but as it produces fruit, it's also gonna get heavier. And these little notches help to actually hold the string in place to keep it from sliding down the T-post and crimping the stem. And the final thing I love about these T-posts is the fact that they're super permanent. I mean, yes, they are gonna rust a little bit, but they're by no means gonna rust out to the point where they become faulty. If you leave them in the garden over winter, you'll get a little surface rust, no big deal at all. The tomato plants are not gonna care. Whereas if you leave a furring strip in the garden for even a season, it'll start to rot out real fast. And the only thing that I would say is kind of a, pros and cons, right? Everything has pros and cons. The only con with these T-posts here, and the reason why I would leave them in the garden for the whole season and possibly, next season and seasons after that, is because installing them can be a bit tricky. This is a post driver, and the sucker is heavy. It's 18.5 pounds, and I do exercise, but it's still heavy to lift this thing above my head, especially when you're talking, you're another 2 feet up. These have already been driven in the ground. It's a bit of a process to get them in the garden. Also, the risk of a concussion is like really high. So the only downside to T-posts really is that, but they're a heck of a lot of fun to use. They're really sturdy and they're gonna hold your tomatoes really well. So that's why I like them over furring strips. Obviously, everyone has their own preferences, but this is one that I've turned to, and I don't think I'm gonna turn away from it. All right, so there we go. There's everything I'm doing today with my tomatoes. We're gonna wrap this up so we can move on to some other garden chores, like getting some weeding done. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you all learned something new. And oh, also, one last thing, sorry. If you would like to check out what I'm using to tie up my tomatoes, this is called Fantastic Elastic. It has been an absolute game changer for me. You can get it over at MIgardener.com. We actually carry it over there. And what it is elastic string. And so if you've ever had any like waistbands or anything stretchy that's clothing, it's actually what they use in that, but it's really thin, so it's awesome because it's easy to cut, easy to tie. It allows the plant to stretch and grow. It allows the wind to blow the plant around. It won't cut or girdle into the stem, and it actually will last the whole season. The sun won't fade or crack it, which is amazing as well. So like I said, go check it out over at MIgardener.com. It is awesome, and honestly, I won't use anything else to tie my tomatoes. It's what I've been using for years, and it's what I'll continue to use for years. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider checking this one out. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you so much for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. If you haven't subscribed yet, it's free. Consider doing that. We upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, rain or shine. And if you need any garden tools, supplies, or seeds, check out MIgardener.com. We got you covered. See you guys in the garden. Bye.